Welcome to Resiliency Within. I am your host, Elaine Miller Karras, and I am just so thrilled today that I have some wonderful people with me, Dr. Peggy Rowe-Ward, Sister Peace, and Celeste Fearson. And I want to tell you a little bit about each one of them and a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. So, Dr. Peggy Rowe-Ward is a senior Dharma teacher whose joyful spirit helps students discover and embody their most creative and authentic selves. She offers a path of deep insight through movement, writing, art, ritual. Peggy holds a doctorate in adult education and an MA in counseling psychology, and is the co-author with her late husband, Dr. Larry Ward, of Love's Garden, a guide to mindful relationships. She has taught in graduate programs in social work, psychology, counseling psychology, and her doctoral research focused on dream work. Peggy maintained a private therapy practice for many years and now offers consultations and spiritual direction focus. And I just want to add that when I was doing the pilot for the community resiliency model that we've spoken about many times on my show, she was an integral part of helping us in the roots and origins of the community resiliency model. So I have a deep appreciation for her. And if you could see me right now, I'm doing a deep bow towards her for all the wonderful work that she did with me and the support that she gave to me as what has become a wonderful lifelong friendship. So, Sister Peace is a monastic and Dharma teacher in the traditions of Thich Nhat Hanh. Sister is a beloved spiritual mentor and teacher and has offered programs in prisons, youth detention centers, corporate boardrooms, and retreats. She traveled with Thich Nhat Hanh and taught in many countries around the world. And I'm so grateful that she's with us today and welcome, Sister Peace. And then finally, we are going to hear the beautiful voice of Celeste Fearson. She's the events and education coordinator for the Lotus Institute. She is an educator and teacher and supports curriculum development. And she also is an adjunct professor of early childhood education, and she has a talent of developing curriculum. So I'm pleased to welcome the three of you today. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Elaine. We're so
Yes.
happy to be with
Thank
you.
you.
Well, and I want to say that Dr. Larry Ward, who left this earth in August, he was a dear friend of mine and, of course, Peggy's beloved husband. And we're going to be talking about his work today. And I'm so pleased that we're going to be able to be doing that. And I want to just say a little bit as we get started on today's show is that I think that Peggy, your intention is today is to reflect on the life and legacy of Larry and his first poetry collection, Morning Night. I know we're going to do a little bit of exploration today to understand the poetry, reading it, writing it, living it, and how he was just this was a powerful form for him in his spiritual practice. Um, I love what people say about him as a true great sound. And of course, one of the very few Black Dharma teachers in his tradition. Larry was a true trailblazer. He was quite a spark of the universe, I'll say. Those are my words, not yours, Peggy, who bridged Buddhism and Christianity lineages and broke through cultural and spiritual barriers with depth, humor, and clarity. And I hope that you will see in this session, our listeners will hear the spirit of morning night and the way Larry's words continue to guide us in the present moment, even though he may not be here in physical form. I think that anyone who knew him and knows of him will feel his spirit. So, with that, Peggy, I know that there is a welcoming that you would like to start with, and I'm going to go over to you for that welcoming.
Yeah. Thanks, Elaine, for that beautiful introduction. And thanks to my friends for being here today with me. Yeah, Larry had a practice of writing a poem before we did retreats, before he met with a group, and then poetry during a retreat, because we had a practice of having people write us letters. And so we would listen to the letters and then we would teach from that. But this is one of those poems that's in his book. Into the circle of all beings we have come, with the sunshine, tree, raven, coyote, deer, rabbit, stars, and precious moonlight. Beloved community is our heart's desire, our human birthright, our destiny in every moment. It lives in our bones and minds as a dream deferred. Yet here we are now, touching and being touched by its true presence. Celebrate this moment, this gathering of working dreams. I join my hands and pray that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space and time rise up from the earth at this precious hour. May these sacred energies bless us with boundless love and awaken within us our very best selves. May they sing the songs of those who have come through the mist of ignorance. May the cup of compassion within our hearts pour out, covering the earth both near and far. May our feet walk gently in the sands of time, echoing purpose, peace, and creative caring throughout this green land. May the nectar of kindness touch our lips as we speak. May we find in ourselves the vast blue sky of inclusiveness. May our hands turn the wheel of time towards a more just and beautiful world, a world worthy of our holy lives. So that's just one example of a welcome that was crafted. And I wanted to bring that today as we come together on this supermoon day, another sacred portal day in December. It's called the cold moon, but to warm our hearts with our opportunity to enter our life awake and awakened.
Thank you, Peggy, for that. And I would like to now ask Sister Peace to share the next part of our time together here today.
Thank you so much. This is a song for Reverend Dr. Ward, and this was written by Dr. Camilla Majid. You loved the natural world and returned us to the trees and the seas, encouraging us to take our woes to the woods, to breathe this gift of air into our burdens, lifting them. To fly aloft on the winds of transmutation, you encouraged us to plant seeds of kindness and courage, always. Emerging from the earth in this lifetime as a Black Bodhisattva, an ancestor carrying the Dajiba of justice in your jaw. You are forever an exemplar of Aditana, determinate, as you endured a lifetime of racism with equanimity in a way that showed us how to face this world before us now. Like Venerable Vimalakirti, you used illness as a symbol of what could be transcended, laughing with us in joie de vivre. You were triumphant over the pains racking your body. You knew yourself to be sacred, being first. One whose spirituality could not be confined to only one religious understanding of our limitless capacities. You knew that enlightenment is augmented by knowledge of all spiritual paths. As a teacher, your range was vast. You could tie the bell chant to bell hooks. You eased our souls even in silence with your very being, grounded in your Dharma body. You exuded compassion, embodying the inherent compassionate life force of the universe itself. Reverend Dr. Ward, you were a sagacious, wise sovereign. You ruled over his own mind and heart. What a wonder that is, to be the master of your own life, Through countless moments of skillful regulation, you defeated racism with your heart. You defeated greed with your soul. Our friend, this king, has won, and his victory shines right there. See it? It's the light flickering through the tears in our eyes. May we weep always with joyful remembrance, refreshing ourselves in the rivers of wisdom you led us to.
Oh my goodness, those are such beautiful words. Peggy, I'm just wondering as you hear the words that someone has written about your beloved Larry, what is happening for you right now?
Yeah, right now in me, I feel the warmth. And I think we know this from any of us who have lost loved ones, which is all of us. But when someone deeply sees and loves someone that we love, there's this connection we feel of being in community with that person. And so this woman, Camila Majid, has really been walking through me, with me, through me since August, writing me regularly and showing up as a sister I didn't know I had. But I'm very moved by it because she names things I know are true. Yeah.
And so, Peggy, I want to say that I know how much Larry loved you. And I feel compelled, we didn't talk about this, and I have to tell just a little story, is that when I first met Larry, so I was in a restaurant actually. This is like a little prelude to this story. I was in a restaurant and I heard two people were at a table and they were talking about Jack Cornfield and Tara Brach, two very important teachers, I believe. And so I was listening and I said to the person I was with, I said, I think they're talking about, Jack Cornfield and Tara Brach. And this person I was with, we knew of their work and I actually met both of them personally. And I said, I'm going to go talk to them and just ask them it's like, those kind of compelling things that sometimes happen in life. And I am an extrovert. And the person I was with said, if you're going to do that, I'm going to go to the restroom. I said, okay, but I'm going to go over there and talk to him. So I did. And they said, oh, and I just introduced myself. And they said, oh, we were talking about because these two amazing people are coming to Claremont, and their names are Dr. Larry Ward and Dr. Peggy Rowe-Ward, and they're going to be starting a Sangha in Claremont. I said, oh, how fascinating! I would love to know more about it. So I gave them my email address. And then they emailed me to tell me when the first, Sangha was happening. And so I can't remember if it was the first or second, but I went. It was at their home. Peggy was not there. It was only Larry. So I was there with them. And at the end, Larry and I had a conversation. And as I was talking to him, I don't know, he must have felt it, Peggy, don't you think? He said, my wife would really, she could use a friend here in Claremont. I think you might be a good candidate. And I said, oh, well, that's such a nice thing to say. And I have to tell you, at that time in my life, I was so busy up to my eyeballs in alligators in terms of like, oh my goodness, I hardly had time to do anything. But somehow, a few weeks later, I said, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and call that person. And I called you, Peggy, and we had tea at Le Pain Quotidien in Claremont. And it just happened to be a day that I was also putting in the newspaper for someone I needed to help me with a project. And so I'm sitting there with her, I'm going, oh, you're so overqualified for this project. I think but I have to ask you about it anyway. And so I told her about the project. She said, well, and I remember what you said. And I'm going to paraphrase it. And please correct me if I'm wrong. But she said, well, sometimes you do something because it's coming from the heart and from the heart spirit. And this sounds like something that might be important to do. Do you remember that, Peggy, saying that to me?
Of course I remember that.
I just wonder if you
Of
did,
course
but
I remember that.
anyway.
Be offered a job on the spot.
But
You know,
but this is really about Larry saying, I think my wife needs a friend. And so little did we know at that meeting that she would become one of my dearest beloved friends of my life, but that's what happened, but maybe he knew. So I feel in the sweet way that he's with us right now together as we're sharing this moment and sharing his incredible poetry that he left us, that we now have forever. But I want to ask you a couple of questions. But before I do that, I want to see if Sister Peace has anything more she wants to say after reading that amazingly beautiful offering.
Thank you so much. It is amazing and beautiful, and it speaks fully for itself. And I hope I just did it a modicum of justice because I have heard Dr. Majid read it, and it is stunningly overwhelming and beautiful, and so beautifully captures so much of the energy and the life and the propulsion that Larry possessed, but he was able to deliver in a way that was palpable. And so I'm just so delighted, and it reminds me. I think I mentioned this the other day as well, that when the three of us were in Africa together with another Dharma teacher, Dr. Ava Avalos, we did a retreat called Fierce Equanimity.
Mm.
And it was just that, and I loved his encouragement and sharing with us that, equanimity is not necessarily an easy thing. It sounds easy. It sounds like the balance. It sounds like the middle, but we had to be fierce about it.
Yeah. And I think there was that fierceness in him,
Absolutely.
and also an incredible tenderness as
And
well, but kind of those both of those qualities that he had. And I can't help but as you say that too, is when we were in Mexico together, Peggy, and we had responded to the earthquake, and I called Peggy, and I didn't even know where she was. I mean, because they traveled a lot. That many people that know Larry had a hard time staying in one spot for a very long period of time. But so Peggy goes, "Oh, we're here in Mexico," and I said, "Oh my gosh, why don't you come and join us?" And so they really, the sweetness of both of them came to help us which was great suffering in Mexico City. But I think that day I remember his suffering as well. And I think that one of the things, Peggy, that I think you saw, I hope that I did that a little bit as well, that we could also carry his suffering when he wanted to express that to us. And that ability to express vulnerability, I don't think is ever easy for us. But there were times that I feel so honored that he was able to share that with me. I know with you, with many people that knew him, and also to have that fiercity of what is right and just in this world and to work towards that. So, thank you for those words because it certainly sparked that memory inside of me about him. So, Peggy, over to you, my friend. Can you share a little bit about Larry's journey as a writer, spiritual teacher? Um,
Yes, I
Maybe a
could.
little bit about his voice.
yeah.
When our teacher Thich Nhat Hanh uh, gave him his name, it was at a Christmas Eve gathering in Plum Village in 1994. And in those days, there was maybe 50 people there. He wasn't the household name then. And he somehow had Larry's Buddhist ordination document there. And
Mhm.
so during that evening, he announced Larry's name, and Larry stood up and he read this document with his name. And his name at that point was True Great Voice. And it also could be translated into True Great Sound. And the whole room erupted, all the monastics and the 50 people that were there, because we all thought, yes, that's his name, that's his calling. Larry had this voice that just went to the well, went deep into the well of spirit. And he was a unique person in our tradition because he was an ordained Christian minister and an ordained Buddhist minister. And so that voice did cross those divides. The last 4 years of his life, he also used to sing when we taught. And so a lot of his Dharma was in singing. He had sung with Aretha Franklin when he was in high school as a backup singer, and was on stage with Aretha, and of course grew up in the church. where part of his church Pentecostal tradition was the choir. And that was a part of his teaching. But yeah, that was a perfect name. Oh, but when he couldn't sing anymore, that's when he moved into True Great Sound. And he moved into his poetry writing more because he wasn't able to sing um, the last 4 years. And that was another situation that he moved through with such grace because that had been his lifetime, this singing voice. And then he moved into more of a written voice, um, which this book is so beautiful. It's not just a plug for Larry's book. It's a song in itself. So I don't know if I answered
I
that.
would love for you to say the name of the book again. I would like to say it many times so that people will
Yes.
go out and purchase it. So say the name of the book again,
It,
Peggy.
Morning, Night. At one time was, I think it was really in the late 80s when we were at Plum Village, our monastery in France, and Larry wasn't sleeping. He was walking around at like 1 a.m. in the morning and he ran into Thich Nhat Hanh. And Thich Nhat Hanh said to him, "Oh, not able to sleep?" And Larry said, "Yeah, I'm not sleeping." And Thich Nhat Hanh said, "When I can't sleep, I write a book." And that really inspired Larry with his writing. And so it was like, okay, can't sleep, I'll write a book. And so some of this book came from those experiences, especially when we were on retreat with people, because we prayed with their letters. We'd have them write us letters the first night about where they were suffering, where they were challenged, where they were enjoying life, how we could support where they were in the journey. And we'd read those letters and put them on the altar, and then these poems would emerge. So,
Well, and as you talk about his voice too, I have to share, I can't, I mean, you're sparking so many memories in me right now. When you had your 60th birthday, I was so honored to be present at your 60th birthday. And when you were living in Claremont. And so we had a lovely day. Your mom was there. Um, it was so lovely to see her. I know she's passed as well. And there's a moment that everything stopped, and Larry says, "I have a gift for Peggy." And he, in his incredible voice, sang to you Some Enchanted Evening from um, South Pacific. It's good. I can feel the sweet tears in my eyes just remembering that moment. And he just looked across the room, and I remember the two of you just looking at each other. And all of us were like, and almost like it was sacrilegious for us to be present, to see this incredible display of love that came through that true sound of his voice. And to know that when he could move through that and put those writings into his poetry, um, how wonderful is that, that that could continue in that way.
yeah, thank you. Now that was something that Larry did for me, our whole 35 years together, but he also did that for communities. In our memorial yesterday, that was the theme I really wanted folks to embrace, was that Larry really did love them. We've heard from so many people that couldn't believe they were so broken with his passing because they didn't know him that well. Why am I so upset? And I wanted them to know he sang it to the monastics at the Plum Village, at Deer Park Monastery, at retreatants. He sang those love songs. So we didn't do Some Enchanted Evening yesterday, but we did do Elvis. Um, and we and we did do Oh, I Love You So. And because every time we taught, Larry sang at least two love songs to the community.
Well, and I just think that I know I keep kind of circling back to you, Peggy, because I really want our listeners to know that the two of you are really in partnership for your lives. And that I know that he got a lot of attention. And I know that sometimes when you're the kind of person that Larry was, he does draw people, in attention, but that you were really equal partners in your Dharma teaching and what you did in the world. And I just want to say that out loud to all my audience, to you, to your dear friends that are with you, to Sister Peace and Celeste, because I think that, really a deep bow to you for all the ways that you've supported people all over the world in really similar ways, maybe a little different ways, but similar ways, and in your own voice, as Larry did.
Yeah, well, thanks, Elaine. I also felt that us just loving each other was the best teaching we could do.
Mhm.
So whenever I worried about what I might do as a teacher, I just relaxed and knew if I can just love Larry and
Mhm.
let him receive my love, I don't need to do anything. There's nothing I need to say. I can just love, and we can respect each other, and we can model this kind of love for everyone. So thank you. I felt my
Yeah.
most important teaching job was just
Well,
to love.
it was very apparent. And of course, as your friend too, I go, "You're moving again?" I'd say, "You're
Not
really
the
moving
only one.
again?" I thought, okay. And so that was a true act of love because I had the honor one time of going to Boise, Idaho with Peggy Rowe-Ward, and she had lived there for many years of her life. And we literally would walk into a grocery store, we walk in to get coffee, and people go, "Peggy, where have you been?" And so I knew she was the kind of person that at a certain time in her life, look at she's if you can see her all now, people, she's giggling a little bit here, is that she was a pretty settled kind of person in one place. And yet, part of your loving him was also being present with him, knowing that there was that vagabond nature of him that had to keep moving. And I just think that was such an act of love that you had for him.
Well, thanks, Elaine. His most important possession and his favorite thing in life was his passport.
Yes, I can imagine that was his passport. There you go. But I think that was part of it. But I want to, I can't believe we've already talked so long. We're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we'll continue this um, I, I guess, wonderful discourse, I'm going to say, talking to Sister Peace and Peggy Rowe-Ward about our dear friend Larry Ward that feels very present right now with us. And we will continue our conversation and learn a little bit more about the spiritual teachings and the poetry of Dr. Larry Ward. So I'll be back in just a couple minutes. Welcome back. I'm Elaine Miller-Karras with Resiliency Within, and I'm going to continue our discussion with Sister Peace and Peggy Rowe-Ward. We have been talking about Dr. Larry Ward and his book of poetry, and I'm going to ask Peggy right now if she will give us a context for the next two poems that we'd like to bring forward today. So, Peggy.
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. Thanks for being there to listen. Appreciate you. I know you're there. I wanted to just write about how Larry started poem catching, and then I wanted to show how it worked with his spiritual practice with another poem. And this is one that was early in his writing of poetry. I will write a poem, maybe, if my heart can catch one as it comes, like a bird catches the wind. Yesterday, at 2:35 a.m., there was a large goose standing on the deck right here at the lake's edge, calling, talking, making sound. A short distance away, another goose in silence, noticing, watching, standing on the same deck, listening. I will write a poem, maybe, if my heart can catch one as it comes, like a bird catches the wind. Even in the darkest hour last night, the ponderosa pines were caught by the grace of the wind to be shaped and reshaped by the mysteries of time and space within their sacred presence, sustained in this little act of daring. And it was that little act of daring that was his encouragement to just to keep writing. Somehow in himself, he called his poetry writing a little act of daring. And somehow those geese captured that for him. The goose that was waiting and watching, and the one that was squawking, and again, making sound. So that was kind of the start of his writing. And then I wanted to say a little bit. Any questions on that, or is that clear enough?
Well, I was just thinking about just some of the languaging, the catching of the poem. It's like the catching of the wind. Sometimes it can be elusive, and yet it leaves a uh, I guess a imprint on us. So it's such a beautiful way to describe how the poems came to him.
Yeah. And then and how he used it as practice is the next poem. The context for this one, Sister Peace will read, was George Floyd's murder. And so what he learned to do was to really sit and pray and sometimes have to walk and a lot of time watching birds. Bird watching was a medicine for Larry. But this poem arose out of his practice with George Floyd's murder.
And can I say one thing too about that? Because he suffered with racism, and he shared it with me at times, snippets of it, and especially in Mexico City. And he had been really shaken by something that happened in the United States, and it was before the murder of George Floyd. But I remember just the pain in him of like going, what am I going to do next? Should we just not be in the United States? Should we live in another country that could be friendlier to Black men? And and we had some conversations and actually did a little bit of work with him about it because I work in a biological way. I don't know if Peggy, if you remember that. But I felt that there was a healing of us being together. I mean, not a complete healing, but there, you know what I'm saying? There was like little nourishing moments of healing
Mhm.
that were important to him. Um, and I know, and I just want to say how important he was to me, because there were times when I would be struggling with the beginnings of try. And I remember one time talking about Buddhism and something that someone had said. He said, "But Elaine, you know that Buddhism is meant to be very embodied." He said, because we were talking about folks that may not embody meditative practice, that they float above themselves. And he
Mhm.
said, well, I don't know if it's really embodied if that happens. And here I'm talking to two very big Dharma teachers, right? But remembering that teaching for me. And he said something at that time, and I believe you might have been with us at that moment. He said, remember, we can lean into that, the suffering. We can lean into the suffering and we can lean out, which is what I was, of course, teaching. in the community resiliency model. And I just remember those kind of synaptic connections, right? About how we can be present with ourselves. And that doesn't mean that we're not present with the suffering. And
Mhm.
he suffered greatly, and yet he had this capacity to speak to the suffering and then to speak in ways that we could have a solve to our soul and to our spirit as human beings. And I think that was one of my great teachings from him.
Mhm. Mhm.
So kind of want to say that before
Yeah.
um,
But
this next part. So
thanks, thanks for
yeah.
naming that. I just want to, he was first shot at when he was 6 years old. And it was a drive-by, and he had the baseball cap where the bullet went through, and just got a cut from it, but it didn't kill him at 6 years old. And the discussions that he had with his family about that. And in my experience, he also was a civil rights activist, and the many times he had to travel and hide from being shot. Or, when we first moved into the South, everything was like brand new to him. And then he said, well, yes, we had to travel at night. We could not travel in the daytime. So yes, I've been in all these states, but we only could travel at night. And where he couldn't stay in motels, but it was risking somebody's life, sometimes a white-bodied person that would give them a room. But they had to show up to their house at night for their safety too. But yeah, and then when our house was bombed, that was a big one that marked our marriage, the first year of our marriage. I always say that was my crash course in race, and experiencing somebody hating you that doesn't even know you. And that was extreme spiritual work for me to figure out how to be with that and to understand the many people that live with that every day. And if I just had that one day with that experience, how I could move through it so I could help other people of all races, all backgrounds to better understand that we're not different. We're human beings.
And you went to Plum Village.
And I went to Plum Village right away with Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And maybe it could just say just a little bit about what people may not, some of my listeners may not know what Plum Village is. So it could just say briefly before Sister Peace reads the poem, what that is.
yeah, when Thich Nhat Hanh could not go, Thich Nhat Hanh came to the United States and met with Dr. King, fell in love with Dr. Martin Luther King, and was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, uh, trying to stop the war in Vietnam. And when that happened, then Vietnam would not allow him back. And so France welcomed Thich Nhat Hanh as a refugee, and Thich Nhat Hanh was able to establish multiple monasteries in France because the French government welcomed him as a homeless immigrant at that point, because his peace activism made him an enemy of North Vietnam and South Vietnam. As much as he tried to stay in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
uh, people always saw that that means taking a side.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that helps, but this was a
Well, I know that
poem.
I know it's been an important place for many people who practiced with him. And I know for you and Larry that Plum Village has been an important part of your life after the horrible bombing that happened to you that you survived. I know
Mhm.
Larry wasn't in the house at the time when it happened. And also after his death, to
Yeah.
be able to go back to a place that gives you great solace and comfort. So um, I'm so glad that Plum Village is in many people's lives, including yours.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, Sister Peace, if you'd like to continue, and if there's any thoughts first that you'd like to
Yeah.
say before reading the
Mhm.
poetry as well.
I mean, there are many things that I could say, but I think for now, I'm going to move into the poem.
Thank you.
The name of this gift is Somebody Stole My Face. It's my face, man. I tell you, somebody stole my face. I can't seem to stop this river of regret. Black face on the ground, black face in cages, black face in chains, black face, no fun. I tell you, somebody stole my face. When I found it, it was dark, like the night's elegant beauty. When I found it, it was in a dreadful theater called The White Man's Burden. When I found it, it was already condemned to live in a basket of lies. I tell you, somebody stole my face, my precious face. I hold it in my hands, catching tears of sorrow and joy. I hold it with the kind of hands of my ancestors. I hold it turning into many faces appearing across time and space. I hold it dancing with the cosmos. In this face, the door of eternity swung open. I tell you, somebody stole my face. But I have a secret for you, my friend. Somebody stole your face too. I know you've been searching for it. It's in the time before time. Embrace your wholeness. Lift yourself and all the rest of us to higher ground. And remember, every time you touch your face, George Floyd can no longer have that joy.
Mm. Thank you, Sister Peace. I think that hearing those words, I know we're on a we're not on an audio program, and there's almost no words to follow something like that, but maybe a moment of silence to take in the words of Larry that you just spoke so eloquently. So for our listeners, let's just take a moment, see what happens to you as you reflect on these words. So, with that, Sister Peace or Peggy, is there anything coming up for you right now that you'd like to say? And Peggy, I think, is hoping that Sister Peace says something. There's a little lean into her right now. So, Sister Peace, I guess I'm going to turn it over to you and see if there's something that's coming up for you right now.
Well, thank you. Taking in the breath that is recommended in the poem. It's an afterthought to say that Larry had a way with words.
Or perhaps an understatement.
An understatement, oh, right. But yet he brandished them like the sword of Manjushri, the one who cut through illusion with wisdom.
Yeah.
And as beautiful as it is, it can shake one to the core. You can be like this. It's not a fearful feeling, but it's a feeling like, oh, I'm not often this close. And that's how I feel. And you know, when I read these poems, well, reading them aloud is of course different than reading it. I feel I hope I do it just this much justice, but there's all that truth.
Yes.
There's all that truth. And yes, in this particular poem, when it talks about the face, you can't help but see George Floyd's face on the ground.
Yeah.
You know, and could have been any of our faces, I think is what he's telling us.
Yeah, I think so.
But it was George Floyd's. Yeah.
And I just want to remind all of our listeners that the name of this amazing poetry book is called, what is it called again? Morning Night. And Peggy, where do people get it? Can they get it on Amazon? Can they go to the Lotus Institute and get it
Yeah.
as well?
Amazon, Ingrid's Park, they can order it. Yes, many. Celeste, you want to add anything there?
Yeah, it's if you go to the Morning, night. If you go to the Lotus website, we have linked all of the different locations that you can purchase the book. So Bookshop, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and it's also going to be available on Parallax Press. Yeah, so 4 different locations.
Thank you, Celeste. And Celeste is here because we're thinking that Celeste could read one of the poems as well, Peggy. So do you maybe want to have that invitation now? I think that would be wonderful to hear Celeste's voice. And I know that Sister Peace and Peggy Rowe-Ward right now, Celeste, are wildly enthusiastic about you doing that. So yes. So which poem are you going to read for
Okay.
us, Celeste?
I am going to read Love Flows. Morning Night is divided into 3 sections: spirit, race, and nature. So Love Flows is from the spirit section. I didn't know I was adopted until age 7. I hid my sorrow under a moon rock. I held hands with ancestors of blood, land, and spirit. They trembled with power. I saluted. Love flowed into me. Roy and Viola Ward, Miss Miller, Miss Fox, Ollie, and Marion Tyndale. Whole churches, Pentecostal, Baptist, and Lutheran. Controlling nothing, trusting forever in the blessings of love. Here is my peace. Years of love vibrate through my heart.
Mm. Thank you, Celeste. I'm going to kind of circle back to you, Peggy, about do you want to say anything about the origins of that poem and what you may know about that poem, knowing that the adoption was part of his story?
Yeah, Larry was found on the streets as a newborn in January in Cleveland, Ohio. And they guessed at his age, and he had to spend the first 6 months in a hospital. And he tells the story of Viola Paris, his mom. That's her maiden name. I love her name. She was Cherokee and Black. And she picked him out of a hospital window. And what he says about that is that it taught him that how to love a stranger, that he had that living example of compassion with his mom and dad. And then the names, I know the other ones are some of the teachers that really helped him. He had some race experiences in the school because when he did really well, exceptional in school, he'd be called into the principal's office and accused of forging things. And more than once he was called in. And so that Mrs. Tinsdale, some of those are some of the teachers that helped champion him. He was at a citywide spelling bee and a math contest. And so those are some of the names of some of the people from his early days, along with his wonderful mom, Viola Paris, who picked him from a window.
And they were adopted, right? His parents.
His parents adopted 4 children.
Yeah.
And he didn't know till he was 7.
Yeah. He didn't
So
know.
till he was 7, when we just have been talking about bits and pieces of Larry's life and just kind of the tapestry of what it was, the richness again, that was all that he was and what he brought in terms of bringing things to the light of goodness and of hope and of like loving the stranger, as you said, Peggy, that he's such an, I guess why so many people are suffering so much of his passing is that he gave so much after suffering so much.
Mhm.
um, Both things were true about him.
Yes.
So our time again is quickly slipping away, but I want to ask you this question. For those who are discovering Larry's work now, what do you hope they take away from Morning Night and his approach to spiritual and poetic practice? So that's really for both of you, for Peggy and for Sister Peace. So whichever one of you wants to go first.
Well, at one level of this is that spiritual practice can take many forms. And spiritual practice can be cooking or gardening. It certainly can be prayer and time in monasteries, but there's many ways. And poetry writing is a spiritual practice and can be. So I would encourage listeners to find their way that helps them come home. And again, it could be gardening or cooking or mantra or prayer, many forms. That would be my first level. You got us first level you've got.
Hmm. Well, Larry's already been described by even our teachers, great sound, great voice. And there are many other great things, like many spiritual masters. In our case, Buddhist. Well, although in Larry's case, it's Buddhist and Christian. And the interesting thing about that is that they often mastered more than one thing.
Yeah.
And I think that Larry is a beautiful example of that. Sometimes we're taught in this time and space that you just master one thing. But the beauty of it is you can master many things. He was a musician. He was a poet. He
Artist.
wrote, right?
Artist too. Yeah,
He
there's
was an
this
artist.
artist.
Yeah, there's art in here that he did.
In
And
his
so
in the book.
yeah,
So you get
in
not only his poems, but his artwork.
he
Yeah, the
did
cover and the back is his
yes,
art.
Oh,
art
okay.
throughout
So
the
we're knowing
book.
that now.
Yes, and so and that's just a few things. Artists, masters, artistry, the humanities, and also medicine, or at least the practice for us of mindfulness, which is being deeply aware of the body. It's not just here. And I think he also embodied that more deeply than we understood until he passed.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask Celeste. I know, Celeste, that you didn't prepare anything, but amongst the four of us here on the call, we only have 2 minutes left. So shortly, you're a young person, Celeste, and you must have learned something from him for to be involved with the Lotus Institute. Can you say just a word or two in less than a minute about what he meant to you?
Yes. I shared yesterday during the 100th day celebration that Larry and I are both Aquarius. And I don't know if I've ever directly worked with an Aquarius. And Larry just taught me to continue to be bold, um, stand in your truth, um, and be unapologetic. Yeah. Um, yeah. I, I would
Kind
say
of that
that's
fierceness that Sister Peace said a little bit ago. Well, and you're a young one. So I imagine you're going to carry with that with you for the rest of your life, Celeste. So thank you for sharing the wisdom of your youth with us as well and what you learned from him.
Mhm.
I'd like to just say for myself, thank you so much, Sister Peace, Celeste, and my dear friend Peggy, for being here with us and sharing the wisdom of Larry. I think the four of us appreciated him greatly, and I'm glad that we could honor him in his words and how much we all cared for him. And I think that he also cared for us in the ways that he would. So with that, I'm going to also say to my listeners, remember what else is true. We heard the suffering of Larry, but we also heard about the great joy and how he brought light into the world. And maybe think about that in your own suffering. Maybe there's some light that you can also lean into, that you can continue your life having, knowing that both can be true. Then Peggy, Sister Peace, Celeste, thank you so much. Deep bow to all three of you. Peggy, if there's anything you want to say as the final word, my dear friend.
No, just thank you, listeners. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Try. It was my privilege and joy to be here and to introduce my beloved Larry.
So thank you so much, all of you. And until we meet again, this is Elaine Miller Karras signing off for Resiliency Within.